Here's what happened across the U.S. in the past hour, all in 60 seconds. Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Prince Harry criticized President Trump after he downplayed Britain's role in Afghanistan during an interview this week. Starmer called the comments insulting and pressed for respect for fallen troops. The Trump administration is weighing a naval blockade or other steps to stop oil shipments to Cuba, officials familiar with talks said. Any move could escalate tensions and raise legal questions. Former special counsel Jack Smith testified to the House Judiciary Committee this week and faced questions about seeking a gag order on Donald Trump. Courts later narrowed the restrictions in the election interference case. Judges in Minnesota rejected Justice Department requests to keep 3 anti-ICE protesters in detention after arrests at a St. Paul church. The defendants were released as the case continues in federal court. DHS says ICE launched Operation Catch of the Day in Maine this week, targeting about 1,400 people. Officials say more than 100 arrests have been made, stirring protests in Portland and Lewiston. Former Olympic snowboarder Ryan Wedding was arrested in Mexico City, where U.S. prosecutors say he ran a major drug trafficking network. Authorities say he faces extradition and federal charges tied to cocaine shipments. Vice President J.D. Vance spoke at the March for Life in Washington, D.C., defending the Trump administration's anti-abortion actions. He said the White House plans more moves after critics urged faster change. DHS has paused planned FEMA staffing cuts as a major winter storm approaches this weekend. Officials said response centers are activated, and workers who received non-renewal notices were told they're still employed. Here's what happened across the U.S. in the past hour, all in 60 seconds. Senate Democrats Tim Kaine and Chris Murphy said they'll oppose the DHS funding bill inside a $1.2 trillion package. Their resistance complicates talks to avert a government shutdown before the January 30 deadline. California Governor Gavin Newsom said the state will join the WHO's Global Outbreak Alert and Response Network after the U.S. withdrawal. Officials say it will improve rapid response to health emergencies. Governor Greg Abbott issued a disaster declaration for 134 Texas counties ahead of a winter storm expected this weekend. The order activates state resources for ice and extreme cold, though Houston area counties weren't included. U.S., Russian, and Ukrainian officials opened their first trilateral talks in Abu Dhabi as fighting continues. Russia reiterated that any deal must include Ukraine giving up territory, and negotiators plan more sessions this weekend. ICE removed detainees from the Cumberland County Jail and canceled its contract after the sheriff criticized agents' tactics. Federal officials acknowledged some transfers violated court orders requiring certain detainees to remain in Maine. 5 people were arrested in the shooting of Indiana Judge Stephen Meyer and his wife at their Lafayette home. Police say the attack was a plot to kill him, and both victims are recovering. The U.S. military said it carried out a strike on a suspected drug trafficking boat in the Eastern Pacific, killing 2 people. 1 survivor was reported, and the Coast Guard launched a search and rescue mission. President Trump said a new NATO framework would guarantee permanent U.S. access to Greenland, and he ruled out using military force. Officials have discussed U.S.-controlled land for future bases as Denmark and Greenland object. Here's what happened across the U.S. in the past hour, all in 60 seconds. DHS has paused planned terminations of FEMA disaster response workers as a massive winter storm moves toward the U.S. FEMA activated its National Coordination Center and is pre-positioning supplies and teams across multiple states. Officials say the Trump administration is considering a naval blockade to stop oil imports to Cuba. No decision has been made, but a cutoff could deepen Cuba's fuel shortages and heighten regional tensions. A federal judge in Minnesota rejected the Justice Department's request to keep several anti-ICE protesters jailed after they were arrested at a St. Paul church. The judge ordered their release as the case proceeds. DHS says ICE has launched Operation Catch of the Day in Maine, targeting about 1,400 people for arrest and deportation. Advocates say the sweep has spread fear, and families are scrambling to locate relatives. Former Olympic snowboarder Ryan Wedding was arrested in Mexico and is being extradited to the U.S. Authorities say he led a major cocaine trafficking network and ordered killings tied to the operation. Special counsel Jack Smith told a House panel he urged the judge to limit Donald Trump's comments to protect witnesses in the case. Courts later narrowed those restrictions, keeping the First Amendment fight alive. People familiar with the matter say President Trump is privately worried the Minnesota protests are hurting his immigration message. The unrest has intensified as federal agents expand ICE operations in the state. ICE removed about 50 detainees from the Cumberland County Jail in Maine and canceled its contract with the facility. The move came after the sheriff publicly criticized ICE's tactics during a recent arrest. A group of Senate Democrats broke with party leaders on a short-term DHS funding package, complicating talks to avert a shutdown. The split raises uncertainty as lawmakers race against the funding deadline. President Trump said the U.S. wants expanded access to military bases in Greenland and called it critical for Arctic security. Danish and Greenland officials pushed back, saying the island's status isn't up for negotiation.